Our special guest today is Kevin Dahl. Kevin, thank you so much for coming. You got a great crowd of Democrats, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great questions and thoughts and ideas. And we appreciate all you do for not only the city of Tucson, but for the Democrats' Greater Tucson as well. So, Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joe. This is my first presentation after my kickoff party. And some of you were there, and I had notes that could have lasted 2 hours. So I'm going to try and keep it short and tell you, why I ran, what I've learned, and what I accomplished, why I'm running again, and have plenty of time for questions. I know a lot of you, but for those of you who may not know me, my career has been in conservation. I worked as executive director of Native Seed Search, Tucson Audubon Society. Before joining the city council, I worked 14 years for a national group that advocated for national parks, National Parks Conservation Association. And I'm now doing city work full time. When I first ran, of course, it was COVID times. Remember, we were wearing masks. And remember when DGT used to meet together for lunch in person? Maybe that could happen again someday. Though the Dragon, was it called? The Dragon something or other Chinese place is no longer in business. I'm married for 38 years. My wife's a retired special education teacher. We have a son who lives in town, who many young people know him as hashtag the guy who dances on Congress. He's made half a career out of dancing with DJs and selling his merchandise downtown in a small shop. And he also is a groundskeeper and PE teacher at a private school, Keno Learning Center. I ran, and I've lived in this house for 40 years and have been involved in so many neighborhood projects. I ran for three reasons: to do stuff about climate change at the local level, to work on water issues, which concerns me a great, and then kind of a lump all category of neighborhoods, making them safe, making them vibrant, getting neighbors involved in their neighborhood, which my wife is still neighborhood president. I live 2 blocks from the Ward 3 office. I live in what would be called the Sal Point neighborhood, but we're Samos because the people who started this many decades ago didn't like Sal Point. Now get along pretty well. And Samos is the Greek island from which a guy who was the first person who built a house in our area came from. So we just kind of liked it. We haven't opened up diplomatic relationships with Samos, but I hope to do that someday, maybe when I'm really retired. I ran also because I was asked. I was asked by people who were looking for someone to work on these issues. And I also ran and got my wife's permission a little reluctantly because I've been involved in Democratic politics forever. I'm a lifelong Democrat, starting as a high school young Democrat. And my work as an environmental lobbyist, it became clear that I needed to support strong environmental candidates. And I've done that. Many of you know the work I've done raising money for folks and making sure people get out to vote and knocking on doors. And I was asked in the fall of 2020, I think it was, that was the Biden election, Biden versus Trump, right? And we were knocking on doors with masks. And election day, I was, like many of us, mission for Arizona, I was knocking all day. And I wound up not far from Grijalva's campaign headquarters, which we hadn't been able to go inside. We were just getting stuff out in the parking lot. Remember that? And I just went to see if anybody was around, and he was there with a bunch of people. And I got to sit down with him, and he was my first endorsement, which I'm very proud of. So I ran a campaign. I had a primary opponent. I had an independent opponent. I had a Republican opponent, and I won. And I started a job that I was somewhat prepared for. I have a set of skills that kind of work out, but I had no idea what the job would be like on a day-to-day basis. And when people ask me that, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Every day is different. Constituent comes in this morning who has a complaint about a business across the wash from her that has changed operations and now is bothering her. We get concerns across the spectrum about our unhoused neighbors and residents. And how are we going to deal with affordable housing? I never thought I would be so much involved in safety and policing. And, our budget is going to be over $2 billion. I also learned that the ward office is really a team. We're able to hire people who do constituent services, and I'm very proud of the team that has served um, in my ward office, who are helping people every day with day-to-day stuff. Where do you go to get an electric bill paid? You just can't make it to the next paycheck. What do you do about potholes? I know a lot about potholes now. And when I was starting my campaign, people said, "Don't talk about climate change. People are concerned about potholes." And it's true. I was knocking on doors yesterday morning, and the first concern was, I hit a pothole on my bicycle. What are we doing about potholes? And I know how to answer that now. But climate change is on everybody's mind, and uh, I think that was a compelling argument for people to vote for me. Every summer, the last few summers, has been the hottest summer that we've ever experienced. And every summer we experience from now on may be the coolest. So there's things we have to do. And I'm proud of what I've helped Tucson do. We have a robust climate action plan, mostly for Tucson operations, but some outside of that. Um, and we have staff, and we cooperate with everybody on climate. By the way, we cooperate with everybody on homelessness and housing as well. Um, what I've learned is that it takes teamwork, not just in my office, but among my colleagues. I made a few mistakes trying to, we got to do this, we got to do this, without really talking with my colleagues and figuring out what everybody's issues are and finding a path forward for all of us. Uh, Specifically in climate change, I have championed some actions that I'm really proud of. I discovered that the commercial rainwater harvesting ordinance was not being enforced. When I got into office 12 years ago, it had been passed. And over the years, they didn't have the staff to enforce it. And as the developers, people came in to get permits, they realized that and they stopped doing a rainwater harvesting plan. Why is this important? When you're building a new building, you're grading the surface, you're doing all sorts of plans. If you just do a little bit of contouring and making basins and plant the right trees, your landscape can survive forever without any additional water. And it's a way to save water, to cool the city, to make the business more pleasant. And we just need to do it. So I worked hard, this was a 4-3 vote. I remember it was one of the few votes I went against the mayor. And she only didn't want to do it because she didn't want to do it off budget time, to hire the staff that we need to implement that. Likewise, I've a proposal that I champion to require all new businesses not to put in decorative turf. You see a big car sales place or a strip mall, and they have a line of grass. It's kids aren't playing on it, dogs aren't pooping on it. It's just there for decoration, and we can't afford to waste our precious pure water on that sort of decoration. And we're also implementing some incentives. We got a grant to have turf removed and changed into native landscaping. So there is a connection between water, energy, climate change. The other thing we're having to grapple with is heat resiliency. So we want to stop doing the emissions that cause climate change, but we also recognize that it's happening every year. And there are vulnerable people. There's a lady who died in her trailer because her electricity went out, and she died from heat stroke in my ward. And I don't want that to happen again. We need to have a robust program of reaching out to the most vulnerable, but we need places for people to cool off. For 2 summers in my community room, if you've been to Ward 3, you know that it's a converted fire station. And where the trucks used to be in the bay is a big community room, which is fabulous. And it's available to anybody as long as you're not selling beer or selling anything. You can't charge and you can't drink alcohol. Was not being used in the summer. And when we were approached by a men's shelter group was looking to do a cooling center in the summer, and they wondered if we knew of any places, one of my staff said, "Well, our community room might work." So we've had a afternoon cooling center 5 days a week through the summer, and watching that happen I personally, my staff has learned a lot about what you need to have in a resiliency and a cooling center. Elsewhere in the city, we have them in recreation centers like Donna Liggins, and that's okay. That's a place where you can go and cool off. But there's not the wraparound services. There's not the staff there who understands people who have been on the street. There's rec technicians who know how to check out basketballs and ping pong paddles and such. So uh, I'm very proud of that center, and I'm very proud that we saved people's lives because there were services there for people who had wounds that they weren't treating, for instance, or who were on drugs who finally did take a step to get help towards get them off drugs. Um, Tucson has in addition to our climate action plan, we have a one water plan. And I was the lone vote, and I was a protest vote because I didn't think it integrated well enough with our climate action plan and with water conservation. And so that's what I've been pushing when I talk to the our water department. We run the water department. We're the water utility, not just for Tucson, but outside the boundaries. And you've probably read about differential water rates, which has been a controversy. Um, uh, and you may have read about we had a federal grant, and hopefully it will continue to build an advanced water treatment plant, which will provide a source of water that formerly were in people's toilets that will be pure enough to drink. I think the best step is to conserve water every place we can. And so that's what I've been pushing everywhere. And to use rainwater and stormwater to do the outside landscaping whenever we can as well. So back to why am I running again? Because I think this work is not done. And I remember I need to talk about neighborhoods, by the way. I'm a strong supporter of neighborhood associations. I've been a leader in neighborhood associations, and we work with neighborhood associations, and we helped one start. There are areas in my ward that aren't served by neighborhood associations, and I think they lose a connection to the city and the potential grants and services and such. I came into the city council too when we were flush with money because federal funds came in to build infrastructure and to deal with the impacts of COVID. And some of that money was distributed on a ward by ward basis. That money is gone. But we use that money to support neighborhood projects and other good nonprofits serving people in Ward 3. A year and a half ago, when I saw that money was going to go away, I'm a nonprofit fundraiser from way back. I thought there should be a nonprofit that's raising money for some of these needs. And I helped found, and I'm no longer on the board, no longer associated with it except to provide information. Friends of Ward 3, that not only has raised money for projects like helping people who are leaving our low barrier homeless shelter that are getting their first apartment in many years and have nothing. And we've also discovered that a lot of kids are going to our shelter because it's one of the few shelters that you're guaranteed child protective services is not going to take your kids. We will make sure your kids go to school, get everything they need so that they're not threatened from being taken away from you. That was a barrier that we discovered was really keeping people with families, people with kids away from services. Um, Providing Christmas and Easter celebrations at that point. The other thing Friends of Ward 3 is doing is working with neighborhood associations. Some are big and strong, like Jefferson Park has their own 501c3, so they can raise money for some of their big projects. But this organization, Friends of Ward 3, provides fundraising help and also a way to raise money from grants or from donors that need to have that 501c3. And they're working with some of our most vulnerable neighborhoods right now. So I'm excited about this work. For me, this is fun. And yes, there's times when people yell at me and when I'm very frustrated that we can't do something. I've learned that things take 5 times longer in the city and can cost 5 or 10 times more expensive than if I was doing it from a nonprofit standpoint. But there's still much good work to be done in these areas and other areas. For instance, the recycling contract is coming up. You may or may not know that Tucson doesn't do the recycling. We have a contract with a corporation, Republic, that's been doing it for years. That contract's coming up for renewal. And I think we want to get the best recycling possible. And I'm not sure that we do at this point. So for the next year and a half, that's on my priority list is to watchdog that, to get people involved. The other thing that I've been able to do, because I'm so involved in the community, is to get people to the table who need to be at the table. So, for instance, in climate action, I talk to everybody. Some of them, people disagree with some of the things I've done, but in general, there are some great people out there doing some work, especially young people. And I've gone overboard to reach out to the Arizona Youth Coalition, Divest, U of A Divest, and other youth groups that are working on this, because not only do they have fresh ideas, they're smart. And for instance, the Arizona Youth Coalition convinced the TUSD board to do a really robust climate action plan. And the board members on that TUSD board who supported that are supporting me. One of the co-leads of the Arizona Youth Climate Coalition is my campaign chair, because much like I was brought into Democratic politics by mentors, and I learned a lot from people, Congressman Grijalva, Richard Elias, so many more. I feel that I'm in a place where I need to reach out and uplift people who want to learn how to do this good work. I'm really proud that I've got Adelita Grijalva's support, and I'm proud to support her. So before we get to questions, I'm getting to the point of the ask. Many of you are my friends and you've already helped me in ways, but what you can do to get involved in my campaign is go to my website, Kevin Dahl, the number 4, Tucson.com. And we're canvassing on Saturday mornings out at Adelita's campaign headquarters. Also at the website, you can sign up for our first fundraiser, Enviros for Kevin Dahl. Some of you know that I've done this Enviros for Grijalva, Enviros for everybody, because I had great connections in the conservation movement. And I wanted to get my conservation colleagues involved in supporting people who support their cause. And now I'm doing it for myself. It feels kind of strange. Yard signs are available. You can donate, of course, up to $500 per person. You can sign up to walk, or you can just go on the volunteer thing and say, I can use your name as a supporter. I have a long list of supporters, which I'm very grateful and proud of that as well. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.